it's healthy in a way. I feel like it's both. I feel like it's reliving it, but I feel like every time I relive it, I think it makes me a little bit stronger.
You're right. I mean? You're right. And it'll be less and less emotional the more you do it, you know? So it's hard at first, but.
Let's go then, whatever.
All right.
I'm just gonna flow. I'm gonna go with the flow. My name is Renata Flot-Patterson, and I am a entrepreneur. I have a destination management company that just basically is an array of services, from catering to entertainment to attractions, and we basically, I still say we, basically sell the Gulf Coast. My daughter and I, we went into business together about 2 years ago, and like I said, still say we because it was my daughter and I who has recently lost her life to domestic violence. I'm married. I have 4 children. Just lost one of the 4, and I have about 10 grandsons. I've lost count.
What, you have all grandsons?
All boys. All boys.
Wow.
And I have 1 great-grandson and 1 great-granddaughter. I did work for the Tourism Bureau up until COVID, and so that ended, and just trying to find my bearings now, especially with the recent tragedy that we've encountered. Just trying to find my bearings and trying to figure things out. I have now become an advocate of domestic violence, so I'm doing a lot of stuff in my daughter's and my grandson's name, and I also lost my grandson, my little grandson, at the same time. And there's just so much going on. Foundations, and we're trying to get a wall where we can do a domestic violence wall, a mural. We have a benefit concert coming up. Oh Lord, it's just a lot.
That's good.
My main goal is I'm trying to establish a safe home. That's my biggest and most passionate goal right now, is to create a safe place for women who are in the position that my daughter was in, so that they can move on with their lives and in a safe place and hopefully transition into a better situation. It's hard reliving it, but I think every time I tell the story or the experience, I think I become stronger in some way. I know for a fact that my daughter is with me. I know she's by my side all the way, every day, all day. Yeah, so in spirit, she's just not here in the flesh. You know? On June 6th, just recently, less than 4 months ago, my daughter, she was killed, her and her son, by the child's father. She had basically broken off the relationship, and she had filed charges for an incident that had happened 10 days prior, where he had came to her home and beat her up and took the baby. She called the police. They found him at his home, and he eventually surrendered and gave up the baby and gave the baby back to my daughter. And that was about May 24th or 25th. I can't remember the exact date. She went immediately the next day with her attorney and filed charges against him. And she also filed a protective order. He was taken to a nearby hospital where he was, I guess, supposed to get a psychiatric evaluation, which I don't know if that ever happened or not. I understand now that the standard rule of thumb is a 72-hour hold. Within 6 hours, he was calling my daughter, asking her to pick him up. And of course, she was like, "Are you crazy? There's no way. I'm not coming to get you." So the very next morning, she filed the protective order. And like I said, filed the charges. And from there, he was served, I think, the day after. I've learned later that he was released from the hospital because he refused to sign the documentation that made him responsible for the bill, because he didn't have medical insurance. So that's why they released him. Now we've got a waiting period. which I also learned later, the actual protective order hearing was set for June 7th. So now you're talking May 25th to June 7th. He's free to do whatever he wants to do. And he did. That's exactly what he did. On the night of June 6th, or the morning, I should say, early morning of June 6th, he broke into my daughter's home. She had a sliding glass door on the back of her, right on the, on her bedroom that led out to a patio in the backyard. And he came in the middle of the morning and busted the glass and walked right in and jumped on top of her and he shot her. No questions asked, no warning. She had not even, I saw where she had talked to him once that night, but it was way earlier that evening. So it wasn't like there was this ongoing confrontation that night. I still to this day am like trying to figure out in my head what could have happened between those hours when she spoke to him, which was like around 9:45 that night, up until the time that he did what he did. My oldest grandson, who was 14 at the time, which was my daughter's son, was in the living room and he was up watching TV. It was a Saturday night, so Sunday morning, whatever. So she let the kids stay up late at night on the weekends when they didn't have school. So, he's up watching TV and he hears the glass break. And as he hears the glass break, he jumps up and he grabs his phone off of the coffee table and runs out the front door, which was literally like a straight shot out of the house. The 10-year-old, on the other hand, was in his bedroom, which was literally like right across the hall from my daughter's bedroom. And he didn't hear the glass break. And I'm learning all this later. He didn't hear the glass break, but he heard his mother scream. And when he heard his mother scream, he got up and walked to the door of her bedroom. And he said that Byron Johnson is the perpetrator. He said that he was on top of her and she was on top of the baby, the 7-month-old baby. He said, in his little mind, he's just trying to calculate what he's seeing. And he said, I think she was trying to protect baby Brix. Mm-hmm. But I think he just, jumped on top of her. I don't think it was any thought. She didn't have time to think about anything. But anyway, he said she was on top of him. On top of my daughter and like kneeling on top of her, and he shot her in the head. And he shot her right next to her right eye. And my grandson, who was 10 years old, he witnessed it. And he just, I guess in shock, turned around and ran to the front door. And the door was wide open. And my other grandson had been running from the back and forth to neighbors' houses, trying to get somebody to answer the door. From the moment he heard the glass break. He turned around, he was across the street at this point, and he turned around and saw his brother just kind of standing in the door staring. Mm-hmm. And he called him, and he ran to him, and they ran around the corner. And my grandson called 911. But before he called 911, he called me. And I missed the call. It was, I heard my phone buzzing, it kind of woke me up, and I looked over and I was like, oh boy. As soon as I saw his name, I said, something's wrong. What's wrong? So I kept trying to call him back. He wasn't answering. And so I called my daughter's phone. And when I called my daughter's phone, Byron answered. And he said, I just killed your fucking daughter. He said, you tried to play me. Y'all tried to play me. Now I'm playing y'all. And I said, this calmness just came over me. It was insane. I don't even understand it to this day. Because normally I'm a hysterical kind of person when shit like this happens, Mm-hmm. But I was so calm. And I just said, Byron, where are my babies? And he said, they're all about to be dead. And so am I. And hung up the phone. And as soon as he hung up the phone, I called 911. And I got the operator on and I gave her the address. And she said, we are on the phone with your grandson. He's already called. We have units on the way. And as I was talking to them, I was like getting dressed and I went into like autopilot. I just automatically jumped up, started putting on clothes. I knew it was bad. I just knew it was so bad. And my husband, I startled him because I'm on the phone now and I'm getting up and he's like, what's going on? I said, get up. I said, something's going on at Keli's house. I said, Ollie just called. I can't get him back, but I have the operator, the 911 operator on the line. She said that they have units on the way. I said, I spoke to Byron. He said he killed her. My husband jumped up immediately, just, and like it's like we just started moving in sync, like just to get over there. My daughter literally lived only 4 minutes away from my home. Mm-hmm. So I knew I could get there quickly. I just had to quickly get dressed. And Lord, it seemed like an hour. It seemed like an hour, but it was probably 5 minutes from the call to getting dressed to out the door. My phone rings and it's the 911 operator. And she says, I just want to let you know that if you're on your way to your daughter's house, do not go to the house, just go to the corner and the police will meet you there. They have your grandchildren. So we get up the road, get to the corner. As we're approaching the corner, the ambulances are slowing down, kind of trying to figure out, I guess, where they're going to park because they've got the street blocked off. I mean, there's police cars everywhere. You can see, SWAT, people with like tactics. You can just see it's bad.
Everybody.
And it looks like a movie, honestly, I'm just sitting there in shock, but I look down, my daughter's house there's one house on the corner and then there's her house. So she's like the second house off the corner, but the yards are really big. So it's a good bit of length or distance, I should say. But I could see from the corner to her house that her car is in the driveway as usual, but his truck is behind her car. So I know now for a fact he's there and this is real. And I'm just, I don't know, my mind is racing. What's going on? And the next thing I see, my next visual is my two grandchildren coming out of a police car. The youngest one, who's 10, who witnessed everything. He's in his underwear. That's it. No shirt, no shoes, no jacket, nothing. Just underwear. He's, bare feet. And they walk them over to our car. They put them in the back seat. And we're just like, I don't know. I think I was at this point, I was numb because I almost knew it was real. I already knew she was dead, but I didn't know how to process it. You know what I mean? And the police officer said, we're going to have you follow us to the golf club, to the clubhouse, because, we're trying to get in touch with them. We're trying to, before we breach the home, we have to try to get a hold of them. No one's answering the phones. So we need you guys to follow us to the clubhouse and we're going to wait it out there. They took my phone and they took my husband's phone and they said, we're going to try to call from these phones, just see if we get anything. So we're sitting in the car. It's raining the whole time. It's just raining. It's been raining for a solid week now. And then all of a sudden, my 10-year-old grandson, we're asking the oldest son, what happened? And so he's explaining to us, I just heard this big loud crash of glass and I just grabbed my phone and ran out the house. And he's like, I just wish I wouldn't have left now, and he's feeling guilty, because now he doesn't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden the 10-year-old just starts talking. It's almost like he starts vomiting his memory. Mm-hmm. And he said, he killed my mom. And we were like, what? And he's like, he shot her. And I'm like, what do you mean, Dio? Ollie and Dio. That's their names. And Dio says, he shot my mom in the head. She was trying to protect Brix. And I go, what do you mean? Tell us what you saw. Tell us what you saw. And he, kind of explained. I heard her scream and I got up and I walked to her bedroom door and Byron was on top of her. And then he shot her and her eyes just bucked wide open. And I said, where was Brix? He said, she was laying on top of him. And I said, okay. So I knew. I don't even know how I feel, honestly. I still don't know how I felt that night. I just know I felt like I knew that it was over. And the sun's coming up and all of a sudden the police officer who we kind of had been communicating with, he starts walking towards us. And as he's walking towards us, I see an ambulance going out of the subdivision, just one. And I looked at him and I said, who's in the ambulance? And he says, it's the baby, he's been shot, but he's alive. And I said, okay. And it was like, and my daughter? He says, I'm very sorry. she's deceased. And I said, and Byron, he said he's deceased as well. He committed suicide. And so I immediately switched gears. I said, okay, I need to go see about my grandbaby. Let's go. I said, where are they taking him? And he said, the hospital. So because I only live 4 minutes away, I says, well, let's stop at home and get Dio some clothes. Dio's a big boy, so he can literally fit my husband's shorts and his shirts. And so we stopped at the house, got him some flip-flops and some shorts, and he had on a police jacket. We got him a t-shirt. One of the policemen gave him his jacket. And we went to the hospital. The baby is in really critical condition, and they're going to life flight him to Alabama. And so, well, okay, we're going to Alabama. I looked at my husband. I said, we're going to Alabama. And he said, okay, we're going to Alabama. It was just like, again, my focus was completely on the baby at that point. And my husband started making phone calls. He would walk away because I'm with the boys, and he would walk away and go make a phone call. And he was starting to call my family, and just handling that part of it. And the next thing I knew, they came back and they said, we're not going to be able to life flight by helicopter because of the weather. We're going to take him by ambulance. So I said, okay, we'll follow the ambulance. The next thing I know, they're taking him out of the ambulance. And I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? Why are they taking him out? And they bring him back into the hospital. And then someone came out and told us he died. So I think he died in the ambulance. So we never made it to Alabama, needless to say, which was fine because now we have other things to tend to, which is family. And, my husband is Keli's stepfather, so I have to call her father. I have to call my parent, my dad and his wife. I have to call my brothers and my sisters, and just a huge family, her siblings. But I can't call anybody. So my husband handled all the phone calls, and the next thing I know, I just said, I can't tell my mother. My mother and Keli were so close. My mother lives here on the Gulf Coast as well. And I said, I need my sister and her husband to come. And they live about 45 minutes away. So my husband called them and told them. And of course, my sister, she was her godmother. So she, of course, lost it. And they came. And we all met at my mother's house. And I couldn't even go in. I just couldn't. I couldn't even see my mother when they told her. And I just heard my mom screaming. And just screaming and screaming. I was outside. I couldn't go in. And then finally, they calmed her down, and then I walked in. And when I walked in, she lost it again. And I said, okay, let's go home. I said, I want to go home. Family just stepped up. Cousins, my sister, everybody. Friends, family, everybody just started stepping up and doing the things that needed to be done to start preparing for a double funeral. I had to call the children's father. My daughter's oldest boys, their father lived in Utah, and him and my daughter are very, very dear friends. They co-parented very well. In spite of issues that they had in the past, they had brought their lives together and started doing a really good job co-parenting and just, doing everything the best they could for their boys. And so now I have to call him, and, I did call him, and it was not pretty. He was very upset. He loved my daughter very much. They were a couple at one time. They had 2 beautiful children, and then they were friends and best friends, for the most part, just trying to raise their boys the best way they could. And so he took it. It was a hard blow for him. Going back, they started dating. She moved into an apartment above his about 2.5 years ago, and that's how they met. And immediately, he was like crazy about her. I realize now those are one of the signs. He he was so happy that she was his new neighbor, a single man living downstairs. This beautiful woman moves upstairs with her children, 2 boys. He immediately just charmed her, and he charmed us as well. We fell in love with him. He was funny, he was charismatic, he was fun to be around. He would make us laugh about how he felt about our daughter. He was just crazy about her. And I really liked him, and I'm thinking, wow, this is it. She's actually found somebody, that's going to treat her good. And as time went on, he did, he became very oriented within the family unit. And all of a sudden, I started getting, these side stories from friends and family members who was kind of hanging out with them, where he had put his hands on her. And I'm like, oh boy. So I'd ask her about it. She said, nothing. He was drunk, whatever. He's good. We're good. And then next thing I know, there's a major situation that happens in February of 2020 where he kidnapped her and took her to the woods in a family home that his parents owned out in kind of like the country area. He beat her. He broke her teeth. And then he had her phone because she jumped out of the truck to get away from him. He found her through the dirt, through the woods. And he called the police and told the police that she assaulted him. And they took her to jail. When they got there, she had not one scratch. He had not one scratch on him. Not one. He called his sister who lived nearby. She came. And they took my daughter to jail. She was arrested for assault. This was his family property. It was his truck. She was beat up, teeth broken out of her mouth, and they took her to jail. And it was a woman officer that came on the scene. Crazy. She found out that night when she went to jail she was pregnant. So the next morning, she comes home and she tells us she's pregnant. And immediately I said, you cannot have this baby. I'm sorry. I would not have this baby if I were you. This man is obviously crazy. And for anybody to do something like this to you, that is crazy. Mm-hmm. There's no other explanation for it. And you don't need to be tied to anything like this or anyone like this. And that is exactly what that baby's going to do, is tie you to him. Well, of course we don't believe in abortions, and she was very adamant about it. She's like, I don't know, Mom. I just don't know if I could have an abortion. And I'm like, Keli, I just don't see you having this baby for this man, Anyways, the next morning when she gets, this is after she's out, we take her to the hospital because she needs to be examined because she's got scratches and bruises and just stuff all over her. And another police officer comes to do another report. They call a supplemental report because evidently there's something wrong that happened that night.
Right.
So even the police officer was like, there's no way in the world that you should have been arrested for this. They confirmed the time, like the length of the pregnancy. And it was in Mississippi, it was too late. She couldn't have an abortion even if she wanted to. And she filed for a protective order. The protective order was not granted. Now this is a man who has a prior history, served 6 months in jail for kidnapping his wife and beating her, pistol whipping her, and leaving her for dead, butt naked. And they denied the protective order.
Why? Did they say why, or they just denied it?
I don't think they ever looked into his history. I don't think anything came, up in court because my daughter didn't know this until after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she didn't know. Okay. We find out later, that this is a pattern. This is something that he does. Mm-hmm. Anyways, no protective order in place. So she finds out she's pregnant. She's done. She's done with him. So the entire time she's pregnant, she's not with him at all. She did talk to him off and on, about the baby and the progress. He knew she was pregnant, but she was not in a relationship with him the entire time she was pregnant. Towards the end of the pregnancy, he wanted to be involved in the birth and, what have you. So she agreed to that. and she allowed him, to be a part of it. By this time, in my mind, as I look back, I think that they had kind of started rekindling their relationship, because the whole time she was pregnant, he went through that whole charming phase again, buying everything she needed for the baby. Even though she didn't need him to, he was still doing it. And, just showing up with gifts and, the whole 9 yards. And then by the time that the baby came, and, obviously delivery was beautiful. I was there, he was there. It was during COVID, so they would only allow 2 people. And it was he and I. And I mean, over the time of her pregnancy, I never trusted him again after that night. My husband never trusted him. He was never allowed to come back to our home. We, not that he was invited for any reason or that she tried to invite him. It was just understood. He's not ever coming back over here. We don't accept him anymore. We welcomed him into our family. We showed him love. This is what he did to our daughter. It's over.
Yeah, right.
No more. Yeah. The weekend she comes home with the baby, there's a hurricane, Hurricane Zeta. And she has no power whatsoever. I'm trying to get her to leave with us. I'm like, why don't you come? We're going to evacuate. She said, no, I think I'm good, Mom. Byron's going to bring over a generator. Okay, so I'm thinking, okay, now, he's definitely back somewhat in the picture. Thanksgiving comes around. She wants to have Thanksgiving dinner at her house. We did that. That was pleasant. He was there. My husband would not go to anything that involved him, period. I, on the other hand, was like, this is my daughter. This is my family. These are my grandchildren. I cannot be like, I don't have anything to do with y'all, because you've got something to do with him. Mm-hmm. I did that for a minute. I did. But, finally I just gave in because I saw the behavior had changed, and it was things were looking good again. But shortly after the new year, I don't know, things just started happening. She moved. The house she was living in, the owner sold it. And so she moved into now this golf course community. She found a beautiful home. And our business was starting to pick up even during COVID, Things were just really looking up. She went to real estate school while she was pregnant. So she was going to take her state exam to get her license. So things were really starting to look up for her, and she just was trying to progress in her life to just be better, Business started coming in for him like crazy. And all of a sudden he wanted to cut her out and was like, no, you're not going to have anything to do with this business. You got your own business with your mom. So then we started seeing the signs of jealousy. It was like, okay, now she's helped him to get where he needs to be. And don't get me wrong, he didn't lack in any work because he was known on the coast for what he did, and he did it well. But now that he has his own business, that, the both of their names is on the business, everything. But he's trying to push her out of it, And she was like, well, then if you don't want me to be part of it, then the least I can do is just do the administrative side of it. And then I'll get paid, for doing the contracts and this, that, and the other. He didn't want to pay her anything. He wanted it all to himself and didn't want to give her a dime to help, but he wanted her help in a sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He wanted to be in control, period.
He wanted to be in control. Exactly. I started hearing about the incidents where it was physical again. And she wasn't telling me. She was telling me other things. She was telling me about how he was verbally abusive and cussing her out and this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. Then he started switching gears and he never did it to the older boy, but he started cussing out the younger boy, the 10-year-old. And my daughter was very, very feisty and very defensive. So there was never a time, trust me, that there was a fight, physical or words, where she did not have her last word or where she did not get physical too. Because
she defended herself. She
defended herself, and she defended her children. She was not going to have it. Mm-hmm. So there was times when she would, you can't come back over here. Don't bring A around here no more. And he would stay away, just leave her alone till she cooled off, till he cooled off, whatever. And it just got to the point where she was just like, I need to get custody of my baby. because this man is tripping. And I already see where this is going. So she did. She went again through her attorney with the Center for Nonviolence, the same one that helped her with that first case, which the charges ended up being dropped for that, because it was clear that she was not.
She was not the perpetrator, right?
Right. One day, I would say it was in May. Right. I think it was right before the last incident before he killed her. Something had happened, and I don't think it was physical, but she was just spent. She was over him. He was just a jerk, and cussing her out, calling her all kinds of names, and I think what happened that night is that he actually jumped on her son, like not physically, but just started yelling at him and cussing him out and calling him, fat ass, MFer, and all kinds of stuff, and she defended her son that night. And after that, she said, Mom, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. But I don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. And I said, well, I honestly don't know what to do either, except for maybe you can, get counseling or something. Because I think she even said to me, like, I think I might need counseling so I can just figure out how to get away from this man, And I said, well, Keli, that would be great, And I said, I'll go with you. I have no problem going with you to counseling. And she said, really, you'll go with me? I said, absolutely. And I said, I think so go to show you how naive and clueless we are, and how I now realize there's not enough awareness for people who don't know what to do. I literally said to her, I was like, I think there's some kind of women's center here where I think they help with that kind of stuff. And I said, just look up, Gulf Coast Women's Center or something. And I said, and we'll call them and see, I said, call them and see if they have classes or counseling or whatever. And so she said, yeah, okay, I'm gonna do that. And I don't know if she ever did. We never talked about it again. Within the next 2 weeks, that's when he went to her house and beat her up and took the baby. And then everything just catapulted from there. Yeah. And this is where we're at now. Like I said, I think when she filed the protective order and when he realized that she was really done with him, she was done. She had had enough. My daughter had a heart of gold. I think she thought she could fix him. She knew that he came from an abusive childhood. He had told her that his father was abusive to his mother. They were always running, from here to Atlanta, trying to get away from the abuse. There was a lot of abuse in their household as a child for him. I learned since my daughter has died and my grandson that his family was aware of his issues, which I knew they were, because the sister would show up periodically to try to, get him away and take him home. And, when there were incidents, I also have learned that there were incidents where the police were called on many occasions at the previous house where he was never arrested, ever. I've learned that now that, there was previous abuse with the ex-wife and all the things that happened with that he served jail time. And I've really just learned that we have a very, very horrible system where victims are not protected. I'm just trying to figure out how to make change, at this point, mainly with the whole protective order situation. It's like, they have this thing where, they have people on house arrest, with this monitoring system, electronic monitoring system. We've talked with some friends of the family and, some people who really love Keli and, like, why can't they come up with, an electronic monitoring system for, abusers? When they're on a protective order, why can't they be tracked as to where they are? Maybe put a ankle bracelet or whatever on the victim and the perpetrator, so that way they can match up and when they're in too close of range. It protects both of them. It protects everyone around them. And there's times where the victim also is wrong. They'll try to get back with the perpetrator when the perpetrator's not trying to do that. You know what I mean? So I think something like that being in place could definitely help the situation, you know, especially if it's a repeat offender, you know, that just continuously lands in these types of relationships and continues to commit these types of acts. You know, there's got to be something where they just don't get a protective order and continue to walk the streets.
Right.
You know, you read too many times now. I mean, like I said, I've become so educated at this point about all these unbelievable cases that are happening all over the world, where the woman had just called the police, or the man had just called, and they had just came out, or there was a protective order in place. But then hours later, or a day later, or 10 days later, in my daughter's case, they end up dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're allowed to continue walking the streets. It makes no sense. You know, this man broke into my daughter's house. She had an alarm system on her house, which he was very aware of. She had a 6-foot wrought iron lock gate that led to her yard, that he evidently hopped it to get in. And he had a protective order against him, which he was aware of because he had been served. It didn't matter. He violated every ounce of protection that she had put in place to protect herself and her family, just to do exactly what he had in his mind to do. And that was to kill her. Yeah. Because he couldn't control her anymore. When he got served with that protective order and he realized that he lost complete control of her and that baby, he lost his mind. He was obviously mentally ill, because if you cannot control your actions when you're up against a situation like that, you have some mental issues. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, he told my daughter one time he had 13 personalities, you know, and they joked about it.
Oh my God.
He joked about it like it was, you know, so maybe he did, you know.
When you talk about his experience as a child, those things do happen. There's a split in the oh my goodness. Other personalities can be formed.
Yeah.
As a result of trying to cope, trying to survive.
And you know what, Symone, I'm gonna tell you something. I can see those patterns. Now that I look back, I can see that could have truly been the case. Mm-hmm. The good Byron was amazing, really good. Like, I really saw that myself. I mean, loving, caring, family man, kind, giving. But then, monster. I cannot say it enough. I cannot reiterate enough to anybody and everybody that is in a domestic violence situation or relationship, or anybody that knows of anybody that is in a domestic violent relationship of any sorts, do everything to encourage them to leave and to get out. And I mean, my daughter did not live with this man, so it can happen to anyone. My daughter never lived with this man. She's always lived on her own. They did not live together. He breached her home. He broke into her home. So you could still not live with somebody and be a threat or danger or in danger. You know, so for those who are living with those abusers and those who are in a relationship with abusers that know where you reside, you need to change that immediately. You need to move on. I don't care what you got to do, who you got to call somebody and figure it out, because you could be that next person. Because when I tell you, I would have never, ever, ever dreamed that this would happen to me or my family members. You hear this stuff on the news all the time. You just, oh, that's sad. You know, oh my God, how horrible. You never dream it's going to be you. But when it hits home, and you realize this can be anybody, you know, domestic violence has no race, no religion, no income status. It can happen to anybody.
Yep.
And it is happening to everybody. I mean, no gender, it doesn't matter, It's happening to men too. It's happening to teenagers. It's happening to elderly people. I know someone right now. I know someone right now that has been in a domestic violence relationship for 50-something years and has chosen to stay. And even up until just recent, there was an incident, and they're in their 70s. So it makes no sense. You could lose your life. I know there are cases where some people do get help and they really change because they go and they get the help. My daughter talked Byron into going to counseling. He was going to counseling, and then all of a sudden he just stopped, because she knew his past, and she knew he was hurting, and she knew he was dealing with some mental health issues. And she was just that type of person where she was loving and caring, and she just wanted to help everybody. I mean, you can go up and down her Facebook page since she's passed away, and everybody has something amazing to say about how she helped them in their life, or how she was always there for them when they needed her, or how she changed their lives, because she was always helping everybody. That's all she wanted to do, was help someone, no matter who it was. And all she wanted to do was have a family, a loving family. She loved being a mother. She loved cooking. She loved taking care of her home. I mean, she has a lot of my traits, as a mother, as a loving mother. And even with Byron's grandson that she just ended up having come into her life, she kind of instantly became a young grandmother. And she took it and welcomed it with open arms. She loved that little baby. And yeah, it got to the point where, that relationship became so volatile with her and him and the ex-wife that she ended up, just saying, don't even bring the grandbaby over anymore because it causes too many problems, Yeah. The ex-wife was very, 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 very jealous of Keli. And crazy enough, this is the woman that he left for dead, but they were friends. And when Keli died, when he killed her and killed his son, she actually defended him. So you obviously have a problem as well. So I don't know. And I don't want to talk much on that because honestly, I don't know her. I don't care to know her. I know she was a problem in my daughter's relationship with Byron, and a lot of what transpired between them had a lot to do with her basically meddling and causing issues. And but again, that's just whatever. He was who he was. He did what he did, and that's the end of that story. The boys surprisingly are well. They're in counseling. They go to group counseling as well as one-on-one counseling. They're in Utah. They live in Salt Lake City now with their dad. They're happy. They love their daddy. They're very close with their father. He's a good dad. He really is. And he will do anything for those boys. And he's doing a lot of his own philanthropic work now with domestic violence. He's actually started a foundation. It's called the Keli and Brix Foundation.
Oh.
Yeah. And he's got a lot of different things that he's got going on to just try to help people in these situations. He wants to focus on youth that are actually going through the things that his boys went through. We talked to our oldest grandson later, of course, after it was all said and done, and he was distraught, because strong kid, very mentally balanced, almost too grown for his age, like you gotta, how the old people used to say, he's got an old soul.
Yeah.
He's got an old soul, But he told us that there were many times he wanted to say something and he just didn't want to tell his mom's business, you know. And there were many times I wanted to reach out to you as well, and I just didn't want to tell her business. I even told her, I said, maybe you should talk to my friend Symone. You know, well, she said, Mom, I just don't know what to do anymore. I said, well, maybe you could start with talking to my friend Symone. She might can direct you. Mm-hmm. But this is at the end. This is when she was coming to the end of it. You know, and
in her defense, she had tried everything. She tried getting help for him and helping him. She had tried reaching out to authorities. She had tried, you know, putting protective orders in place. She had tried calling the police. She had tried everything. She
did. And even with the business, you know, with convincing him to start his own business, I think she was doing that. Matter of fact, I know she was, because we talked about it. More or less to help him to build his self-esteem. What he would do is, when he would get mad at her, when she didn't, you know, like if they would have an argument or a fight, then he would be so out of control emotionally. He would get on Facebook and say all kinds of horrible things about her. He would tell his family and friends all kinds of horrible things about her. I mean, crazy stuff, like she is a whore, she's sleeping with other men. I mean, stuff that was not true at all. Mm-hmm. At all. It was like crazy for you to even say this, because you look so stupid, because everybody can see who she is. You can see what her character is just by going to her Facebook page. She's a mom. She's a hardworking woman. She goes to work every day. She's an event planner. She's this, she's that. She's a family girl. She's with her cousins all the time. She's with her mom all the time. She's on drugs. She's a whore. She's this, you know. But that's what they do.
Yeah, alienate from support from family, from friends, so that he can have all the control.
Right. I mean, but even here, you know, we were involved in, you know, the community here because of our business. So we know a lot of, you know, vendors, event vendors, and convention, you know, service vendors. And my daughter, she was an event planner. She worked with many people, you know, photographers, caterers, you know, you name it, DJs, bands. They all loved her. They all knew her. They knew who she was. And they all miss her. So everybody is affected by this. You know, it's like a domino effect. Her children are affected. Their dad is affected. Her siblings. Her friends in Utah. You know, she grew up in Utah. We lived there for 24 years. I raised her there. I was overwhelmed by the amount of people that actually came here for their funeral from Utah, because they loved her, and they love her. They miss her. There's not a day I don't go on social media and somebody has posted something about her and how much they miss her or what she did for them in their life. Every day. I don't want anybody to forget her. I don't want her to be forgotten. I want to carry her name. I want to be her voice. I want to speak about what has transpired in my life, in her life, in baby Brix's life, in her children's lives. And I want to speak about how this does not have to be this way to people who are suffering in these types of relationships. And even survivors, women who have survived, who may contemplate possibly going back, you know, or, you know, having some form of relationship with these abusers. Be careful. Be careful. Because you just never know. You never know where somebody's mind is at, what they're going through, how they will react to certain situations.
The extent to which they will go and maintain that control.
Right. Yep. So that's pretty much it, Symone. I mean, like, honestly, I'm just pushing forward, and like I told you, you know, I want to start speaking on it. You know, I'm just trying to figure out different platforms that would be available or opportunities, because I just feel like I have to be that voice for her. You know, for all the other Kelis that are out there suffering. I've learned since this has happened is that it's so common. It's so common. It happens everywhere. I mean, and just last week, it happened again here in coastal Mississippi. Beautiful mother, military veteran, 43 years old. Her husband went there, estranged husband. He wasn't living with her, I guess. 2 boys in the home, 9 and 15, same ages pretty much. Went there, kicked in the door, shot her several times. She survived. She survived. And I know, you know, my daughter didn't survive. And I ask that question all the time. You know, I said, why, God? Why her? Why wasn't she a survivor? So many people survive. So many people get out. Why wasn't she a survivor? It's the biggest question that I have, and I always have probably. But I feel like she served her life's purpose. I feel like Brix served his life's purpose. I feel like he came here, honestly, to get both of his parents because they were both in turmoil. It's just so weird how it all kind of came about. She wasn't trying to have a baby. Her youngest son was 10 years old. Now all of a sudden she's got this baby who's angelic. Oh my God, he was the sweetest baby ever.
Really cutie.
Happy all the time. I mean, he hardly ever cried unless he needed a diaper change or a bottle. He was pleasant. And so I feel like he was the little angel that had to come and save them. Yeah. But she wasn't a survivor. And I believe there's a purpose behind that. And I believe that I am going to be that person that's going to serve that purpose.